Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shavita Sharma Kukreja, Managing Director at Central Square Foundation. Welcome to our Charcha session on reimagining the role of parents and community in the current times of COVID from an education perspective. I was thinking, as I was thinking about this session, and I also got a chance to connect with our panelists, at some level, I think we're still processing what Corona has meant for us, for our lives, and what it has meant for our families and for the education system. I think both professionally as, as a part of CSF and personally as a parent of two young kids, I've always been intrigued by what we've always theoretically said, that education can happen anytime, anywhere. Why do we limit itself? Why do we think of education in the constraints of a school system? That बच्चे स्कूल जाकर ही सीखेंगे, स्कूल में ही पढ़ेंगे. The reality of our situation as it's playing out with Corona is that we have to practically now take education and learning beyond just the conventional definition of the school system. And the practical reality along with that is that while this is a need of the hour, it is also a competing need. This need has to compete with health, with livelihood, with sustenance and survival. I'm looking forward to unwrapping the complexity of this issue, how interconnected it is to, at a humanitarian level, what might seem even more critical aspects of survival with our fabulous panel. I think these are professionals and organizations which have always been doing outstanding work and have done some incredible work in their first response to COVID. I would like to welcome our panelists, Abhishek Choudhary from Saja, Ankit Arora from Sarthi, Manmohan Singh from Kevalia Education Foundation, and Saurabh Taneja from Akanksha. Thank you all so much for making the time for us this afternoon. Looking forward to the discussions.
Thanks, Shavita.
Thank you, Shavita.
Thank you, lovely to be here.
Thank you. Just to get the ball rolling and to get us started, I would request each panelist to maybe take a couple of minutes to briefly introduce us to your work and specifically talk about what your first response to COVID has been. And we understand that the response would have been broader than just how the role community can play in education. But to begin with, just to set the context, Abhishek, can I request you to get us started?
Yeah, thank you, Shavita. Hello, everyone. So at Saja, we work with parents and communities since last 5 years. And when we started, there were already immense innovation going on in fields of pedagogy, technology, school leadership. And there was this critical missing link, our parents, which we were, I don't know why we were not recognizing it. They were important for us, but there was, be it the government system or the philanthropy, we were ignoring this bit of it. Yeah, but interestingly, our constitution had a beautiful mandate of school management committees that empowers parents to be the decision maker of the institution, which we call school. And there our journey began because we saw that be it the academic barrier of the parents, be it the educational barriers, be it the barriers because of labor laws, when they were supported in the right manner, their value addition in the school system and the lives of children were immense. And that's why we said we are going to leverage the potential right there in the parents community and transform the education system. While on the mission, we also realized that the definition of show of hand in the parent meeting or the head count in the SMC meeting is very limiting to say what parent role is. And we learned from them, and the definition is vast. They contribute from like cleaning the toilet of a school or planting a beautiful bougainvillea tree plant next to the school gate, or like spending time with the children in the home, or making like some fighting an RTI maybe. That's just their role contribution is immense. And so at Saja, we said we are going to support parents across 4 circles, which begins at home, learning environment at home, goes up to the teacher-parent collaboration because parents' role is there in classroom as well. And how can they influence decisions at the school level? And then making parental voice heard at the system level for big changes. Across all these 4 domains, what was consistent for us was dignity. If we gave dignity, ensure that their dignity is not hampered, their participation was there. Like the question about how, if they're going to daily wage, why are they going to come and volunteer for the school? But that's for the dignity, that's for the identity and the self-respect. And the second point was listening. If the school principal or teacher or the system listened to their voices, responded to their needs, they came very often. They came again and again. And that's the two core beliefs of Saja, that give them dignity, listen to their voices. And as you said, like as the COVID came, it was the lockdown came in, and everyone was panicking to respond. And our response was like from health needs, from their job needs. Like a couple of parents they used to sell clothes in Kamla Nagar market on the street side, and the vendors, and they became jobless overnight. So our response was, how can we go back, check in on them, listen to them was the first job, and ensure that their dignity is intact. In this process, we have done like in-depth conversation for over 10,000 parents in Delhi, urban low-income neighborhood, and Maharashtra tribal parents. And through other medium like WhatsApp chatbot, IVRS, and more broadcast kind of a connection, we have connected to a much broader audience. But the insights and learning which we have got from these one-on-one with 10,000 parents has set some good food for thought for this conversation maybe ahead.
Thank you, Abhishek. I'm just keeping it alphabetical for our first round. Ankit, would request you to introduce Sarthi and the work that you're doing.
Sure. Thanks, Shavita, and thanks, Abhishek. I think those are wonderful words. So at Sarthi, our focus has been that how can we get parents more involved in their child's education. And as Abhishek mentioned that, there have been massive research, whether it's like a few studies or the meta-analysis of all these studies, which has like established a positive correlation between a parent's involvement and a child's lifelong achievement outcomes, not just the learning outcomes, but lifelong achievement outcomes. And that's a huge thing. And like, the oldest program for parent engagement has been running from 1971, I think, which started in Israel in University of Jerusalem, and which is actually even active today. So I think in India we had somehow lost on that opportunity to work with parents, but it's coming back again, and it's great to see that. So at Sarthi, our basic hypothesis is that parents do have the capability, they do have the capacity. These the mothers we work with are super smart. They can achieve anything they want. So what our thing is, like, one, to provide them with resources which otherwise are not available for practicing, for getting that extra practice dosage or fun learning activities. And the second thing we provide is the awareness and confidence to the mother that why this is important. And the second thing, yes, you can do it. And I think our response, specifically to talk about our response to the COVID, the first and foremost thing was to establish the trust again with the communities, with the parent, that yes, we are there. So I think the immigration problem that we're seeing in some states it's massive, and in the other states it's not that as much. And that has to do with the trust deficit with the state government. If you don't trust your government, if you don't trust the authority, you're not bound to listen to them even if they ask you to stay back. So I think our first point was to establish that trust again with our parents, that yes, we are here. And the first couple of weeks are only to figure out if anyone is going, if anyone is having like massive trouble. So can we do direct cash transfers? Can we do any kind of other helpful information coming from the government and to our parents? So I think that really helped. And I think post that, and we'll talk about it more in the later part of the session, was to continue the agenda of learning so that nobody misses on it. And we just went on almost all the platforms that we had, including TikTok, which I was thinking would be the last thing I would do in my life. But because the massive amount of parents are there, so we had to launch a TikTok channel also, just to be in touch with them and just to ensure that the learning agenda continues.
Thank you, Ankit. Manmohan, would love to hear from you about Kavalya's work in response to COVID.
So thank you, Savita. Kavalya is set up to help government to improve learning outcomes in India. That's the one objective, and we call it, how can we help in improving life chances of children born in the country? And that we're trying to do through mainly few programs, that how do we support district and look at district as unit of change. And within the district, one of the core program element is the constructive community action. How do we look at community not as a fitment, that school becomes center of gravity, and you just somehow try to manage community to bring in. Instead of that, school is in center of the community and it is integrated. So constructive community action, how do you improve governance? How do you build the capability of middle managers, whether it is cluster block level? That's the one program we are trying to work with government. And the other one is that how do you work with the state and help them in rebuilding the institution, whether it is SCRT, CMAT or DIET. This was conceptualized 25 years ago. So how do you revisit them and help them to rebuild these institutions? Similarly, how do you look at the learning and development? Training keeps happening in government. So how do you completely revamp that L&D? Similarly, technology. There are a lot of tech work which is happening in India. There are 700 plus companies I recently learned in content. So what do we need in technology and how do you support government again in that? Whether legal work similarly, that some state has 70,000 plus legal court cases and secretary spend a lot of time in just court. So how do you set up system again there? How do you use process improvement by bringing the skills which is outside? So these are the work we are trying to do with the state. And how do you start now reimagining the education from just saying foundational learning is extremely important, but is that enough? So how can we bring socio-emotional learning? How can we bring 21st century skills now? And therefore, what curriculum work need to happen? What capacity building need to be happened? What institution building need to happen? All that. So that's the work we are trying to do with multiple state government in India. So that's about Cavalier. On the I quickly want to respond that, I went through my own churn, entire organization went through this churn that nobody had seen it. We are hearing this again and again. So, see, we all are social purpose organization. While agenda was to solve education problem, but ultimately it's a social purpose organization. So in the first few weeks, we did from whatever it took in the district or state. So example, in Odisha, our team is involved with the state government again to help government of Odisha to ensure that 1 lakh plus migrant worker who were in Tamil Nadu and other state help in that process to ensure their well-being. In Assam, again, we are working with the Assam government to ensure that, Assam government has a scheme and our team is supporting the education department is also involved, right, with them. That how do you ensure that where are the migrant worker of Assam and whatever money needs to be transferred, whatever support need to be done, that work. Now, this is not purely education. Similarly, in aspirational district, if there are 112 aspirational districts in India and we are in 25 of them, there, again, large number of problems. And we realize one of the, high risk area, while there are a lot of work happening on migrant worker and still a lot more to be done, that the high risk population is senior citizen. 60 plus. And we realize that, all of us are talking about well-being, happiness and all that of children, right? What about the well-being of 60 plus? There are 2.9 million senior citizens in these 25 districts we are working in. So then we decided to focus, at the moment in school, parents are busy in managing their livelihood. They are going through a lot of emotional crisis, right? So there is no space to focus on learning at the moment. Of course, they are learning. Whatever they are doing, they are learning. But we decided not to push more content at this stage. Rather, we have designed something called Surakshit Dada Dadi Nana Nani Abhiyan. Apne saath apno ka dhyan. How can you provide, intervention? So we have designed intervention on behavioral change through virtual support. We have designed again that, if they have a problem related to food, problem related to medicine, many of the senior citizens takes medicine and they are not able to get on right time. How do you ensure access to medicine or entitlement? So that's what we have focused in these 25 districts. And there are lots of heartwarming stories that just by someone calling Dadi ji and, कि आप क्यों फोन किए हैं? तो हम जिला प्रशासन की तरफ से फोन कर रहे हैं. आप कैसी हो अम्मा? आपकी तबीयत कैसी है? And the happiness level, is amazing that, someone else also care for me and, their son, one of the person in Singrauli, उनका बेटा ने फोन उठाया, बोला वो आप मेरी माँ के बारे में आप फोन कर रहे हैं, तो he got so happy, इसे कि मैं भी करूंगा ये काम और मेरे गांव में जितने बुजुर्ग हैं उसके लिए मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ. So there are about 12,000 volunteers working on this and we are trying to do this with district administration. That's what we are trying to do in the COVID response at the moment.
Great. Thank you, Manmohan. Moving on, Saurabh, would love to hear how Akanksha has engaged with your community of schools and parents in response to COVID.
The disadvantage of going after these stellar presenters is there's nothing new to say, Shavita. So, that's the disadvantage of starting with my S. But I think like Abhishek and Ankit and Manmohan have mentioned, so we at Akanksha run 21 so-called excellent schools in public-private partnership model in Mumbai and Pune. Just to give a quick context, 71% of our parents are daily wage earners. We have a very small percentage of parents who are migrant workers. So the challenges are slightly different, but they've still been a massive hit on their income and livelihoods and the struggles that come with it. 78% of the families that Akanksha serves right now, which is close to 10,000 families and parents, they are located in highest containment zones of the country in Mumbai and Pune. So their kind of struggles are very different. And I think our response has been just sort of repurposing our school teams who are focused on the well-being of the children. So what the biggest pivot, I would say, Shavita and the team, has been that we have always believed in holistic impact on the child. We're now saying you need to think about holistic impact on the household and the family, where the child is a part of it. And that's like the moment you sort of repurpose and, reorient your thinking towards that, and then start building, what are the basic things that are required. So, I mean, we have materialized support for close to 4,700 families with food relief. We have partnered with, a few health-based organizations like Swasth Foundation in Mumbai that have 20-odd primary health clinics where our parents have been really struggling for non-COVID support, right? Like real pains in terms of, I have like TB issues. What do I really do about it? And so I think like it's been a lot more tangible support and connecting them with those kind of resources that are very immediate and urgent need. The second has been, we think about social and emotional well-being of our children. We repurposed, and our counseling team has been phenomenal in creating what Abhishek mentioned as listening spaces for our parents. So we set up like a helpline for 10,000 of our parents, who are going through a lot of emotional turmoil. And it doesn't really mean that there were not enough helplines, there are enough helplines in Mumbai and Pune. It's just a paucity of trust. And I think like what we realized is that, until unless they really trust like an educator or a familiar person to talk this through, you will not be feeling lighter enough to focus on other things. And the third has been more about assisting, especially with younger ones, 3 to 8-year-olds, with sort of learning activities and tasks at home to keep the kids engaged. And our learning has been slightly different from what I've been hearing on the other panels and from some of the government folks. 67% of our parents are saying their number one concern is not livelihood and food. It's about what's going to happen to my kids' learning and education, right? So there are some small percentage of parents who, ever since the trains have started again, for moving the migrants, our school leaders have been receiving frantic calls in saying कि दीदी हम लोग जाने वाले हैं लेकिन वापस आएंगे तो एडमिशन मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा. So but that's just the context in Mumbai and Pune. Potentially that's very different. So I think that's the way we have been responding so far, Shavita, overall towards the specific needs of the parent and the community.
Great. Thank you, everyone. As I hear about the incredible work that you've all done, even in the first response, the words in my head that all of you have used which stand out are trust, listening, dignity, being relevant to their needs, and solving for what they need there and then. And I think that is so essential to create that safe space and then start engaging and start expecting them to also engage, right? I think like all of us have shared that we've all taken our own time to process this and accept that this is a new world order we're all living in. Would love to, specifically now do a deep dive on a couple of ideas from your organizations, from your engagements with community, from an education perspective, which might have started out tactically, right? And sometimes in the first response, I come up with an idea and I run with it. but now are beginning to feel like they might be worth making semi-permanent, or they could be a strategic part of our engagement with community for education going forward. Any specific ideas, any specific program iterations that you're all doing with the communities that you serve? And it is, I'm glad that in a way there's a diversity of communities that are getting represented, from what Manmohan spoke about, the aspirational districts, to Delhi where Ankit and Abhishek work, and sort of the composition of the parent community in the Bombay and Pune schools. Would love to hear some specific strategies from an education perspective. Saurabh, we can start with you this time.
Thanks, Savita. So I think there are a couple of developing ideas right now. One is that we are sort of broadening the purpose of the school itself, right? Fundamentally, we are just saying that, look, up until now, there's been a lot of focus. 80% of your focus in the school is always inside the classroom, inside the school, and it's primarily about educational outcomes. And then you used SMC and the parents in supporting the child's learning and development. Like the most critical need in the next 12 to 18 to 24 months, till such time as a vaccine is developed and it reaches our parents, health is going to be the most urgent priority. And like what we have learned from the previous pandemics in Africa, in Ebola, like the schools were repurposed as community schools, right? Like what Manmohan said and what I've seen in both Shiksha Samiti. The moment you sort of start viewing your school as community school in response to the needs of the community, health and education, the compartmentalization will need to go. It needs to be collapsed. And then we need to start thinking about the role of the parents and the school management committee in enabling that. And there are a couple of ideas developing that, what WHO has in the past mentioned about role of community healthcare workers, and not all the responsibilities can be executed by parents without adequate training. But how do you really repurpose the roles of the school management committee going forward and include them in the larger narrative of health-based education as well? And like in the next 12 to 18 to 24 months, like you need to look at nutrition, development of immunity, hygiene, behavior change, because these communities where Akanksha is serving in Mumbai, Pune will continue to stay at high risk. There's no social distancing, and behavior change is not easy. Messages are reaching them, like we are sending them messages, but it doesn't necessarily translate itself into behavior change. So first, repurpose the school, think about the role of the school management committees. And the third strategic shift is the government generally just talks about the mandate of SMCs. Akanksha has always believed in parent development. SMC is a small part of it, right? You have to look at your whole parent community, see them as your partners and not as, beneficiaries, right? And the moment you sort of see them like that, then you are talking about, how can you rope them in for child's learning and health and well-being overall. So that's where we are in terms of the strategic shift, Savita.
Okay, thank you, Saurabh. Abhishek, I know you completely resonate with what Saurabh said, that SMCs is an institutional norm provided under right to education, but the role of the parent in education is so much more. What have been some of the strategies that Saja has successfully been able to offer to the community of parents that you're all working with, specifically from an education lens?
Yeah, thank you, Savita, for double quoting on the word education lens. So, and we see it's very important to focus on education, though we are going all over, which is very important. And the reason I say this, in any kind of a crisis, women or children are the worst hit. And education helps us to bring back the spotlight on the children. And if we don't talk about the education, we are missing the spotlight, which should be on the children. So as educators, we have to talk about education, and we have an option to redefine it right now. I am going to talk about a lot of health and other things, but let me confess that we are focused on education of children. The first thing which we say is like, know your families and know your communities. And it's very important for us. So for an example, I'll give a contrast between Delhi urban population, which we work, and the tribal population. And again, it's limited because we have missed a lot of population, which we have not been able to connect over phone or any other digital media. So we say there are fighters, survivors, and navigators. The fighters are the one who are like, they are still thinking where the next meal is going to come in. And I just like heard a story from Trilokpuri in Delhi, where the parents were trying to, the entire family was migrating to UP, and they are quarantined in Noida sector 122. So these are the people who come under fighters. In Delhi, we see they're coming around 20 to 30%, 25 to 30%. In Maharashtra, we are seeing that roughly around 15 to 20% so far, the parents we are working with. The survivors are the parents who have access to food. They also have access to some kind of digital content. But their food is like they have 5 kgs of rice and some packets of namak. And that would, like a 5 kg rice would make them survive for like another week or two. So they're always thinking about the ambiguity of future. So they will try to store that dry ration and choose to stand in the queue of a khichdi distribution center. So these are the families living in the ambiguity. And the third category, the navigators, the survivors, I'd say, would be around 40 to 60%. The navigators have access to technology. Their challenges are कि Zoom पे बेटी का class miss हो गया, कैसे कर सकते हैं? अच्छा, recording भी मिल सकती है क्या? Notebook कहाँ से मिलेगा? Photocopy तो चल नहीं रहा है, ये assessment sheet आया है, कैसे करें? Books कैसे मिलेंगे, sir? So these are their queries. So, and all these families are staying in one community, and which we say we are going to serve their needs, and they have different needs. So know your families and know your communities and listen to them and provide the support they need, be it, and of course, keeping education focused. The second bit of learning was a curriculum for home. As like the school shut down, we started sending the school curriculum to the home itself. And it's just not the public school, even the private schools started replicating the same. But the curriculum for home needs to consider the home learning environment. There are different stories. There are different, the stories about migration. There are stories about struggles. And their siblings who are studying in a neighboring school or maybe a school dropout. So this curriculum has to focus on bringing the community together, the family together, helping them to get a structure in their life, helping them to come out of the stress. So curriculum for home was our focus. And one thing which we learned, instead of sending them like content, what we send them inspiration and energy. We thought like we can send hope to our parents, they'll come up with content. And we got like a lot of messages, and हमने ये किया, हमने बच्चों के साथ मिलके ये आइसक्रीम स्टिक से ये बनाया, आज हमने सबने मिलके सफाई की, आज हमने सब्जी का बनाते वक्त उसके ये कुछ सीखा. So they have the capacity to redesign it. So these are a couple of things. And one thing's like when we do the check-in call, the first thing our callers ask कि खाना खाया कि नहीं खाया, या कल शाम को क्या खाया आपने. That's the way we check in into the kitchen of the household. Is there enough ration? कल रात को आप सोए कि नहीं? That is a check-in into the stress level of the household in a sense. Was there a domestic violence, or was there a different kind of a stress issue, or maybe there's no electricity last night because of which kids could not sleep. So that when we are taking education to the classroom, we have to take this perspective of teachers connecting to the life and the environment of home rather than classroom environment content just being replicated over there. So I'll stop here. I can go on, but I want to hear more stories which are equally inspirational.
No, thank you, Abhishek. I think it's a very interesting articulation how you're looking at fighters, survivors, and navigators. Because as I think, and as questions are coming up, somebody's asked for what are engaging strategies. And you know, in education, I think one word which we all tend to sometimes overuse is whatever we are doing has to be contextual. It has to be contextual to the state, to the kind of school system. But I think it's such an important call out to say that it has to be contextual to what's happening in the more holistically in the life of that family in which I'm seeking to engage with them. Manmohan, I'd like to pull you into the conversation. You know, when you also spoke about it's looking at family as a unit collectively, right? One of the examples you gave, which was non-education, but you're reaching out to check on the elderly and the kind of interest that's spiking from the rest of the family members. What's been Kevalya's experience across your very diverse type of governments and school systems that you're engaging with, just because geographically they are so dispersed, specifically on any of the education strategies that you might have tried out already?
Yeah, thank you, Savita. So I think we went through our internal debate that what is education, and what is worth teaching. When we said, when someone can say, oh, working with elders is education or not. And you can debate both ways. That of course, this is not about teaching mathematics or language, but this is definitely education. If the purpose of education is to be able to create an individual who can achieve his or her full potential, if the purpose is to become much more emotionally strong, right? This is a great example. There are about 10-15,000 teachers working on this, right? And when they are able to build this emotional connect, the children, if they are able to care, if we want to build a society which is a lot more compassionate and caring, isn't this education? Now, this is not completely, this is a portion of it, right? So our experience is that how do we move the conversation at the moment, and for last 2 decades, is that parent participation, right? Community participation. So when we say participant, here also, only 5 of us are talking, there are participants. They are not speaking. If we continue to do this, then the question will be, how do we ensure that the participant who is listening participates? So we have given question answer, limited. Same is happening in school, that they are participants. This has to completely shift from participants to equal owner, co-panelist, right? Of course, there will be challenge. Example, here there is challenge, and how do you manage like 200 people, 174 at the moment, and have conversation? But nothing is like, complex than solving this problem. It's not that we can't solve it. Human being can solve this problem. So can we shift from participation to owner, completely ownership? And then I want to give some example that, there is a huge gap between parents and school because of multiple reasons, historical reason, cultural reason, the way we define education, the way we perceive education. जो डिग्री लेता है वो पढ़ा लिखा माना जाता है, जिसके पास डिग्री नहीं वो पढ़ा नहीं है. And I can give some example कि अनपढ़ व्यक्ति so called जो स्कूल नहीं गया वो ड्राइवर है और वो पूरे देश में घूमता है, उससे बेटर ज्योग्राफी शायद ज्योग्राफी के टीचर नहीं पढ़ा सकता. कि राजस्थान में जब निकलते हैं तो जैसलमेर से जाओगे तो कैसी वहां की जलवायु है, कैसा वहां का खान पान है, और जब उदयपुर जाते हैं तो वहां भी क्या सिचुएशन है, एंड व्हाट हैपेंस इन गुजरात. Now, and there are these examples which you will hear anecdotal evidence. Now, the point is, if we don't look at the parents, their skill, agriculture, ये अभी क्या है, SMC होना चाहिए, वो तो ठीक है, वो तो हो गया, but वो standardize, if we standardize that, वो काम नहीं करेगा. कोई गांव में, let's say, agriculture उतना नहीं है, but mines है, या फिर वहां से services में बहुत सारे लोग हैं, they can contribute differently. There are villages which full of musicians. How do you use them? There are villages with local sports. Why are we not using them? And still debating कि vacancy है बहुत सारा teacher में, and we will not be able to do it. So I think complete reimagination of curriculum is required, and this is an opportunity now. And of course, it's not easy, but I think if we don't think through now, look at what happened because of Corona. Entire world is shut down. And what are we doing therefore? Are we preparing our children for an uncertain world? If we are, then the skills will be required is completely different. So our experience is, and that's what we were trying to do, that's a constructive community action. They are doing a lot more. The knowledge, the understanding which they have. Of course, I'm saying that there are, and a lot of people understand that. How do we decode that and start building it together? So if government can pay 5 teachers in a village, why can't parents be appointed on rotational basis, and they are also paid, that there are these 7 or whatever 10 skills which they are bringing on table? Why can't children go to the khet, agriculture farm and learn for 5 days, and they are not marked not attended. They are marked that they are attended and they have done some project. Why can't children go and work with some local MSME type of work, and they are marked that they learned this skill? In this situation, we know that how livelihood is going to suffer. That entire secondary education has to completely reimagine. नहीं तो उनको मजबूरी में कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा, and then we'll have a lot of debate that children are dropping out. Children are dropping out because we have not thought it through.
Well, thank you.
this is an opportunity for all of us to think. There are examples, there are, good practices. Anyway, government is also thinking through revamping the entire NCF. I'm hoping that through that something will happen. I'm hoping that this type of conversation will lead to something. And for us, we are going to focus on this for sure. That how do we involve parents, not just involve, look at my words also, involve, not involve. How parents are going to become as responsible as others are, right? And we think through this systemically and put it together, which is workable and scalable.
No, thank you, Manmohan. Thank you so much for, and I think like you said, right, when you're using the word involved, we're also conditioned to look at different stakeholders in the ecosystem. We box them for what their role is. And thank you for saying that, can this moment of crisis actually give us the space to more strategically and systematically look at it more holistically, not piecemeal, and not only because yahan aise hi hota aaya hai. Changing tracks to some more, and one of the questions specifically asked for more tactical strategies to engage parents into education. Ankit, would love to have you share some specific examples. I know when we connected, you spoke about the WhatsApp model and how you're managing to get a very good response rate. Would love to have you share some of your strategies, please.
Sure. So I think after like the couple of weeks of doing the relief and recovery thing that we were doing with the communities, the second step was to, as I had mentioned earlier, to continue the learning agenda with the parents. So first and foremost thing in our mind was how to reach the parents. So one is like, at this time when you say that I'm going to create a new app or I'm going to create a new tool which the parents are going to use, is a very difficult thing to do. So we realized the kind of tools that the parents are already using, and WhatsApp was the most ubiquitous one, because even like everyone who has a smartphone had a WhatsApp on it. The second thing is, when we were kind of weighing between what the model should be like when I'm sending a parent an activity, what should it look like? Should it be a video? Should it be like an online classroom? One thing which you also have to understand is that the family or the parent who has the device is not ready to block their device for 3 to 4 hours. So this is not one of the spare devices in the family. This is the only device in the family. So if you're saying that school online class chalayega and for 4 hours or 3 hours it has to be blocked, that's not possible. So what we wanted to create was like a system where the phone has to be used only for 5 to 10 minutes, only for the transaction, while the thing that the child is doing has to be physical, has to be like a paper pencil or a concrete thing that they can do. The other thing was that, for a very long time, even at Sarthi, when we went to the parents, we had our own ideas, we had our own hypotheses to kind of foist it upon them. But I think when we have worked with the parents, you have realized that they have their own very specific aspirations. And if you want to meet them, you have to meet those aspirations as well. So if I go and tell them, you have to do this activity-based learning, nobody's, they don't buy it, because for them, ki job milti hai 12th ke number se, 12th में marks आते हैं पढ़ाई करने से, शीटें भरने से. Don't tell me activity based learning करना है. So for me, I have to put a lot of effort on the marketing, on the awareness side of the thing, that yes, this is also important. But in many cases that fails. So the other thing is that you meet the parents where they want you to meet, at least to begin with. So keeping all these constraints, all these things in mind, we launched a WhatsApp model where what we do is at 10 a.m. every day in the morning, a parent receives a worksheet, kind of a thing on their mobile, which is according to the level of their child, which you have already assessed. And what they have to do is note down this worksheet into the child's notebook. The elder sibling can do it, the mother can do it, the father can do it, anyone can do it. The child spends half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, depending on the activity that we have sent, which is a mixture of like questions of mathematics plus some kind of activities that is to interact with your elders at home or create a collateral for COVID, etc. And in the evening, it's the mother's responsibility to click a photo of the child's work or send a recording, do an audio recording via WhatsApp and send it back to us. Our relationship managers, who are like a team of community-based women entrepreneurs, they basically receive these responses from the mothers. They correct it, grade it, whether your score, the score of your child is 9 and 10, 9 and 20 today, and send it back to the mother with the feedback. Okay, this is what you did right today. This is what your child did wrong today. So I think this whole transaction, when the parents started to see that there is someone on the other end of the device who is much more caring about my child's education than anyone else is, so I think the trust level starts to go up. They start to engage pretty more, and this was very visible with the data also. So I think around 25th March, the 25th March week, when we had started sending out these models, the response rate was only 20%. So out of around 2,400 parents that we were sending this worksheet to, 1,500 parents we were sending to, only 20% were responding back. But I think with all these things that, okay, the kind of material I'm sending, the kind of response I'm giving, the kind of support I'm giving after sending the worksheet, I'm giving the feedback, the response rate had gone up to 80%, and it has been consistently above 80% for the last 2 weeks now. In fact, what also happened was, so even the parents who do not have smartphones with them, what they are trying to do is, like, our parents who had smartphones are giving the worksheet to their neighbors also. So we get asked, can you send like grade 2, grade 3 and grade 4 worksheets to me also? There are a couple of children who live above my house, maybe they can also do it. So that's how the enrollment started to get up. And now what's happening is, so like we have got around 2,400 parents from 1,500 where we started. So all these 900 children joined in the last 2 weeks via word of mouth, just by sending a WhatsApp message, can I be enrolled? And what we are seeing right now, I think what you had mentioned initially was very interesting term, that whether it's a semi-permanent thing or it's more of a strategic shift that we're getting into. So I think you're very right, because doing WhatsApp has been on our minds for the last 2 years, but we were just not getting that push. And I think COVID-19 gave us that push. So as I think Satya Nadella recently said that 2 years of digitization has happened in just 2 months. I think that pretty much happened with us also, where we had no choice but to be on WhatsApp. And what has happened is that, like, especially I feel much closer to the children now. I can see my children's work daily, on a daily basis. I can get into touch with my RNs, go into my drives history and see what kind of responses am I getting. What was the overall score of the children today? Like, how many, if I have sent it to 2,400 children, how many of them scored 20 on 20? How, like, who is struggling in which subject? I can intervene much quickly than I would have otherwise. And then the other thing is that with all this kind of data, what we are thinking is maybe this is the future ahead. Of course, we'll get into the physical thing also. We'll have to send the activity boxes, more stuff, more practice that way. But I think in this way, it really helps us. Just a very quick thing I would like to also point out is the point on impact. So I think in non-profit sector, what I've seen is the person most concerned with the impact is the funding agency, because they are the ones pushing behind the non-profit. Where is the impact? So is the impact. Then the funding agency is, okay, I'll show it. The least person concerned is the beneficiary. But I think because of this model, what we have seen is the most concerned person in this entire chain has been the mother, who is getting the child score every day and saying कि मेरे बच्चे की सिर्फ 12 number आए 20 में से. What is wrong? And then the RN tells him this is wrong. I'll send the same sheet tomorrow. Don't worry. Do it again till the child is scoring 20 and 20. The Khan Academy's mastery to progress, basically, hypothesis. That's what is getting ingrained into mothers organically. So now they also know, they are also obsessed with the child's growth, child impact, with the right learning markers. This is coming to us, whether parents are learning every day, children are learning every day or not, and then it is going to some funding agency. Okay, yes, Sarthi is showing some kind of impact. So I think the cycle has reversed, which was very important and is helping now.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Just loving the energy of the discussion from strategically, fundamentally needing to revisit education, looking at the role the school is playing in the community more holistically, looking at parent engagement and development much broader than SMCs, and the tactical strategies, Ankit, like you said, right? Something which was on the horizon and has been expedited. I think one of the much abused phrase being used currently is never waste a good crisis. And I think in many ways, we are all trying to respond as best to this as we can. What I was hoping to do in 2 sections, I'm having to club into one. I'm mindful of time, but just as we wrap up and we have back-to-back sessions scheduled, would request each of you to just, for the benefit of a very diverse audience that we have, would love to have you summarize just one specific ask from the education ecosystem, from a particular stakeholder. What would they do better? And second, what's keeping you personally upbeat and positive through these tough times? In any particular order, looking for volunteers.
I can start, Savita. I came prepared.
Please, Saurabh, go ahead.
So I think I was listening to the morning segment with Ashish and Rukmani from Pratham. Rukmani made an incredible statement that, that this is the year to welcome the parents with a big party once the schools reopen, because they have sort of saved all our educators and teachers' jobs. But I think like thinking about, there was a recommendation in the NEP, at least in the pre-final or pre-final iteration. This is the year, if there is investment possible, to bring community level social workers. Even if it's per school or shared between 2 to 3 schools, this is the year to make that investment. And by the end of the year, all the challenges that we are talking about, parent engagement or lack of thereof, or dropouts and everything, I would say that if we had money, I understand there isn't, that's what will keep us going. What's keeping me going? Like as we speak right now, my team organized like a strategizing session with our parent community in one of the cities in Pune. As we speak, there is a topic happening called Chai Pe Charcha with 500 parents on Zoom right now. I think we need to sort of, whatever this digitization revolution is going to come along, if we can take our parents along with us or the community members along with us, I think we need to sort of have the same high expectations as we have for our kids in that, as we move along. So that's what's keeping me hopeful and energized as we move ahead.
Thank you, Saurabh.
May I?
Sure, Manmohan. Manmohan, then Abhishek. Manmohan, go ahead.
तो हम बहुत पहले से सुनते हुए आए हैं रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर का वो लाइन दैट इट टेक्स द एंटायर विलेज टू रेज किड्स. So I think now it is the time to do that. And there I was saying that from Sahbhag, which is participation, to Sahkarmi, which is a co-worker. How do we make this transition? Now this is the time to rethink that, so that we include village really in education.
And Manmohan, what's giving you energy? What's keeping you positive?
So I think every day those stories of, so last, I think 6 days, we have worked with around 35,000 family members, where we are talking to Dadaji to Bacha, and to children who may be in the districts or in Mumbai or somewhere else. And the stories of how merely a phone call with genuine care and compassion, you're listening to understand, not to respond. You're just listening to understand and empathizing, and just mere, some problem, someone was in Mumbai, so Pune, parents is in Katihar, in Bihar, and this number happened to, goes to this person. He said कि मेरे माँ बाप वहाँ पे उनको राशन नहीं पहुँचवा पा रहा हूँ, क्या आप कुछ कर सकते हैं? And within 1 hour, ration gets delivered, and the happiness of this person, right? A teacher who is struggling every day, that how to take care of himself and the family, happens to talk to 4 more, elders, and he's feeling, emotionally charged that I can do more. That's what keeping me motivated, that I think there are lots of good things happening in India. And I think if we continue to do that, we'll be able to build a much better society, and education will contribute as always.
Thank you, Manmohan. Abhishek?
Yeah, so my ask remains the same. So when it comes to education, parents are our frontline workers right now, and we have to give them the credit. They're just not delivery node for our content, our thoughts and ideas. We have to ensure their rights. We have to ensure their well-being. We have to provide the right support. And as a sector, we need to come together. As government, we need to come together to support these parents who are actually the front line of education, at least in this time right now. And what's keeping for Saja, it's actually a peak point. Like what we are doing is more relevant than ever right now in last 5-6 years. So that's, the energy is very high in the team. Personally, I'm really excited by the N number of webinars happening these days, and so much of learning sharing across. So I'm pretty excited with the webinars as well.
Thank you, Abhishek. Ankit?
I think my ask is again the same, that we have to listen to the parents really well, understand what their needs and what their aspirations are, and meet them there. And I think that will take us places. That will take everyone to the right point where we want, because the parent has this innate motivation to want the best for their child. And I think Saurabh had mentioned an amazing statistic in the beginning, that most of the parents, although they are concerned about the health and everything associated with the COVID-19, but I think the massive problem on their head is like, what is going to happen with my child? And I think that's what is helping us go ahead with it as well. I think keeping myself, I think it hasn't sunk in yet. I think it has been only 1.5, 2 months, and I think there has been a lot of changes. Talking to so many people, changing your program, getting things on the ground. So I think it still is going, and this is including the work, not just work from home, but work for home as well. So I think there's a lot to do. So it's just trying to find a balance between that.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the difference you're making in all the lives and the geographies and areas that you're working in. Thank you to the Nudge team for inviting us as a panel as a part of Charcha. We have some Q&A which is still open in the chat box. If our panelists could stay on and respond to them in the chat, would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chavita. Thank you, Nudge team. Thank you.